Listen there!
The movie opens as the narrator named Mrs. Naomi tells the love story of Ruth Moably, a girl who was abandoned at age 5 at a church doorstep, while also explaining to we the viewers that love is the most powerful force in the universe. However, this doesn't always come with fairy tales and flowers, as sometimes it shows up in the most unexpected and unconventional ways. We discover that Ruth loved to sing, but couldn't find a song in her spirit. The narrator's son, Marlon, who was Ruth's boyfriend, decided to show off Ruth's voice to his mother, but unfortunately, she wasn't pleased. She felt she was just another pretty girl with privileges. Once Ruth was done, Marlon's mom showed her dislike, and this got Ruth worried, but her friend tried to encourage and lift her mood. They got interrupted by their manager, named Cy. He tried introducing Ruth and Brianna to an investor who owned 404, but Ruth knew this wasn't the kind of music she wanted for herself, so she was really reluctant to accept the offer. Afterwards, Ruth spoke to her boyfriend about it, and he thought she was still worried about his mom, so he encouraged her to take up the offer and ignore his mom's attitude. However, Ruth was still not feeling this, so she left. Mrs. Naomi kept trying to convince her husband that Ruth isn't who they all think she is, and her son is better off without her, but her husband named Eli tried telling her to calm down and quit being judgmental. A few days later, we are meant to know that Ruth finally accepted the offer to join 404, and while she was trying to record a song, she kept getting distracted. Her friend Brianna tried encouraging her, but she wasn't just feeling it. She tells Brianna that she didn't like the kind of music they are doing with 404, and she feels it isn't from their heart. Brianna got furious and told her they needed the money to be able to survive, but Ruth couldn't have it anymore, so she quit. She ran off to tell her manager, but he refused. He told her she won't be free until she fulfills his contractual obligations to him, given the fact that he has been paying for her necessary needs for the past 3 years, even her rent, which so far he has spent about $250,000, but still Ruth refused. Ruth tried calling her boyfriend when she got home, but instead his mom, Mrs. Naomi, picked the call and told her that Marlon and Eli were in the hospital. Ruth dashed out quickly to meet her. Getting there, she found out that they were both shot and in critical condition. While Mrs. Naomi was still explaining, the doctor came and broke the news of Eli and Marlon's death. They both cried their eyes out, with Brianna trying to console them. On their burial, Ruth eavesdropped on Eli's lawyer and Mrs. Naomi's conversation. So apparently, Mr. Eli used all his property as leverage when his business started crumbling, and since he died without paying back, all his properties had to be auctioned. Luckily, he left his wife with just one house in her name. Cy came to pay his condolences to Ruth, or so she thought. He confessed that he was involved in the carjacking that killed Mr. Eli and Marlon to get Ruth back to 404, and bid to save himself and clear his debt. Ruth was furious and threatened to tell the police, but he threatened to kill more people she cared about. Ruth got home and begged God on her knees to help her. Immediately, she decided to leave and find Mrs. Naomi, but before she got there, Mrs. Naomi had already left. Ruth had to run after her, and luckily, she found Mrs. Naomi already sitting in a train. Mrs. Naomi was shocked and tried to get her off the train, but Ruth refused. They got to Mrs. Naomi's old house in Pegram, and it was all sadness. Mrs. Naomi got so pissed at even Jesus that she took out the cross in her room. The next day, Ruth goes out and bid to search for a job, but couldn't find any except for grape harvesting. She had no choice than to join them because she was desperate. There, she met Lena, a friendly co-worker who showed her the ropes. The two worked together. However, once they were all done, Ruth also met Boaz, whose father owned the farm. On the other hand, Mrs. Naomi tried to clear her head by cleaning the house, but she got a surprise visit from Pastor Charles, her old pastor. She refused to let him in, so he had to encourage her spiritually from outside the door. At the winery, a worker found out Ruth worked with 404 and asked her about it, but she got angry and told him she wasn't working with them. While talking, Gino, Boaz's friend and manager, called and told her that Boaz wanted to offer her a permanent position for the rest of the season. This made her really happy, and she decided to take up the Lena offer of going to the bar to celebrate. Lena tried to encourage Ruth to sing again, but she refused, so Lena sneakingly added her name to the list, and luckily Boaz and Gino walked into the bar. She was reluctant to sing, but she did, and they were all amazed at her voice, especially Boaz. It was like she was speaking to his soul. Afterwards, he tried buying her drinks, which she refused, and that was when she found out he was actually the owner of the grape winery. But yet she still wasn't willing to give him a shot. Meanwhile, Cy was still looking for Ruth. He even went as far as threatening Brianna. Although she didn't budge, he did not give up, as he vowed to fish Ruth out. Back to the house, Mrs. Naomi still refused to go to church on Sunday, even though Ruth tried convincing her. The next day at the farm, Ruth found out Lena posted her singing video at the bar. Immediately, she got agitated and asked her to take it down because she was scared that Cy might see the video. Later that very day, the church surprised Mrs. Naomi with a house makeover to make it feel more at home for them, and she was so happy about it. The work started with everyone working together to put a smile on Mrs. Naomi's face. Once they were done, Mrs. Naomi tried setting Boaz and Ruth up by making them take a walk and converse about Ruth's voice. Ruth heard Mrs. Naomi scream and ran to her, only to find out Boaz got them a car. She didn't know how to feel, but she accepted it anyway. The next day at the farm, Boaz took Ruth for another surprise. He took her to meet a celebrity producer, and Ruth got so excited. Babyface, who was the producer, told her to sing while he played the piano, and this time she sang from her heart. Ruth finally opened up fully to Boaz and decided to go on a date with him. So in total joy, Ruth ran straight to Mrs. Naomi to inform her the good news, only to find her in tears, as the thoughts of never seeing her husband and son hit her badly. Ruth comforted her, and afterwards they continued to have a session with her new producer. Once she was done, Ruth called her best friend and bid to discuss about her new life, but during their conversation, Brianna informed her about the video of her singing. She also told Ruth to be careful, given the fact Sy might have seen it. Later, Ruth wore the dress Mrs. Naomi gifted her to the date, and Boaz was mesmerized by her beauty. The date was going very smoothly, until it just wasn't, because Ruth was so scared she was going to hurt Boaz just like her previous relationship. He got home feeling very sad while Mrs. Naomi comforted her as Ruth believes she does not get to live happily ever after. The next day, Ruth and Lena went for a festival, and surprisingly, Sy was there looking for Ruth, but luckily Ruth got a call of emergency that Mrs. Naomi was in the hospital, so Sy could not find her. He tried asking Boaz about her, but Boaz attacked him instead, so he backed off. Mrs. Naomi encouraged Ruth to tell Boaz how she felt about him, and Ruth decided to do this through singing. While singing, she saw Sy and got scared, but she kept singing. When she was done, they found out the store where Boaz kept his priceless 2017 wine was on fire. Boaz tried to stop the fire, but he couldn't. He knelt down helplessly and in tears. Ruth decided it was time she stopped running from her fears, so she decided to go back to Atlanta with Sy, although Boaz wasn't pleased, but she went anyway. The detective found out that someone had set the winery on fire on purpose, and when he told Boaz about it, he already knew who it was and pleaded with the detective to send back up to Mrs. Naomi's house. Mrs. Naomi refused to let Ruth go, but Sy threatened her. She found out that Sy was responsible for her husband and son's death and also Boaz's winery that caught fire. When Mr. Naomi tried to defend Ruth, Sy attacked her before then aggressively dragging Ruth to the car. Boaz rushed to help Ruth when Sy refused. They both started throwing punches. Ruth begged and begged, but Sy and his bodyguard refused to let go of Boaz. Sy tried shooting Boaz, but luckily Mrs. Naomi shot the ground with a hunter gun, and this made Sy to back off. The police arrived on time to arrest both Sy and his bodyguard. Ruth still felt guilty for Boaz's winery and tried to break up with him, but he refused. They went back to the burnt winery to clear up, although the wine bottles were not broken, but Boaz felt it was undrinkable, but still Ruth and Gino decided to try it out, and to their surprise it even tasted better. After testing all the wine, they took the wine to Ronan, who was a wine collector, to see if their wine could still win Best in Show, and luckily they did win. Boaz and Ruth were so excited, and Boaz decided to name the wine R&B, which means for Ruth and Boaz. Months later, they got married, and finally Ruth had a happily ever after, which she thought she would never have. Mrs. Naomi finally accepted back Jesus and hung her cross back. The movie then came to an end. Kindly subscribe for more movie recap like this. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.